The room was dark, except for the faint glow of a phone screen. Ayanna sat on the edge of her bed, knees pulled close to her chest, staring at the message she already knew wouldn't change. Seen. No reply. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the phone as if holding it could somehow hold him too. Ayanna was an African woman, deep brown skin, soft curls framing her face, eyes that carried too much emotion for a world that barely returned it. She wasn't weak. She had survived enough to know the difference between pain and love. And yet tonight, they felt the same. The man she was waiting for was Jaehoon. A Korean man. Quiet. Reserved. The kind who didn't speak much, but when he did, his words felt important. At least, they used to. They met in college. Ayanna remembered it clearly, standing in the library aisle, reaching for a book she couldn't pronounce, let alone understand. Her fingers barely grazed the spine before someone gently pulled it free and placed it in her hands. She looked up. Jaehoon. Here, he said softly. His accent was subtle. His eyes avoided hers, but his gesture felt sincere. Thank you, she smiled. He nodded once, then walked away. That should have been it. But somehow, it wasn't. Dates turned into conversations. Conversations turned into late-night messages. Late-night messages turned into promises spoken quietly, as if afraid the world might hear. You feel different, Ayanna, Jaehoon once told her. You make things feel calm. That sentence alone kept her going for weeks. She didn't realize then that some people use words the way others use silence, only when it suits them. Ayanna pressed record and sent a voice message, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound strong. I'm really tired today, Jaehoon. I don't feel okay. She waited. Minutes passed. Then a reply finally came. You're too sensitive. That was it. No question. No concern. No why. Just a label. Sensitive. Her chest tightened as tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't sob. She didn't scream. She had learned long ago how to cry quietly. Because loud pain annoyed people. Ayanna had never asked for much. Not expensive gifts. Not constant attention. Not perfection. Just presence. She had given him her time, cancelling plans, ignoring friends, choosing him over herself again and again. She stayed awake when he couldn't sleep. She listened when he was overwhelmed. She reassured him when he doubted himself. And when she finally needed support, she was too much. Jaehoon had changed. Slowly. Subtly. Shorter replies. Longer silences. Busy excuses that felt rehearsed. And every time Ayanna tried to explain how she felt, he sighed as if her emotions were a burden. Why do you always create problems? He once said. That sentence didn't just hurt. It shifted something inside. Ayanna stared at the ceiling, replaying memories like a movie she could no longer pause. Had she loved too deeply? Had she given too freely? Or had she simply chosen the wrong person? She whispered to herself. When did loving you become a mistake? Her phone buzzed. Another message from Jaehoon. I need space. No explanation. Just distance. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Ayanna tried to sleep, but the bed felt too big and too empty. Every time her eyes closed, she saw Jaehoon's face, the same quiet expression, the same unreadable gaze. She remembered the way he used to laugh softly, leaning against her shoulder during late-night walks. She remembered how his fingers had traced hers once, almost like a promise. But promises were fragile things, and fragile things broke easily. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, trying to hold on to warmth that wasn't there. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from him. I don't want to talk right now. Nothing more. No reason, no apology. Just cold words that sank like stones in her chest. Ayanna buried her face in her pillow and let herself cry quietly. Not a loud cry. She had learned years ago that loud cries were for the world, but private pain was hers alone. For months, she had bent herself backward for him. She had stayed up late helping him with his work, even when she had exams. She had put aside her own dreams, her own friends, her own happiness. And now she was nothing to him. It wasn't even anger she felt. It was emptiness. A hollow ache that filled every corner of her being. She felt invisible, discarded, unworthy of even a word of kindness. Days passed like this. Every time she reached out, he would pull away. Every time she tried to explain, he would label her as too sensitive or dramatic. She began to wonder if she had imagined the early days, the warmth, the care, if it had ever existed at all. One evening, she decided to see him. Maybe, just maybe, if she could look into his eyes, she could understand what went wrong. She found him at their usual cafe. He was sitting alone, headphones in, staring at his laptop. The moment she stepped in, he didn't even look up. "Jihoon," she whispered. He lifted his head slowly, giving her a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he said, closing his laptop. "What are you doing here?" She felt a lump in her throat. "I wanted to talk," he sighed and leaned back. "There's nothing to talk about," that was it. No discussion. No acknowledgement of her pain. No apology for weeks of neglect. Just nothing. Ayana's chest tightened. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted him to finally see how much she had given, how much she had loved. But the words wouldn't come. They got stuck, tangled in the fear of being dismissed again. Instead, she sat down quietly, feeling more alone in his presence than she had ever felt apart from him. For the first time, she noticed the subtle changes, the way he barely touched her hand, the way his eyes drifted away when she spoke, the way he seemed to exist in a world that didn't include her. It was crushing. The realization that someone you love can be physically present, yet emotionally absent, is a special kind of pain. She remembered telling herself she was strong. That she would survive anything. But this was something different. Something that no motivational quote could fix. Something that no amount of self-love could patch overnight. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. Every time she tried to reach him, he pulled away. Every attempt to communicate ended in silence or a dismissive phrase. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Ayana began to shrink. Not in body, but in spirit. She stopped sending late-night messages. She stopped asking about his day. She stopped hoping for warmth that never came. And in that silence, she found herself crying more than ever. Alone in her room, at the bus stop, on the way to class, tears that fell freely, without judgment. She let herself feel the emptiness that had become her new companion. One night, after a particularly long day, she sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. She whispered to herself, "I gave you everything and still, I'm nothing to you." It wasn't anger. It wasn't resentment. It was a quiet, aching sorrow that settled deep in her chest. A sorrow that whispered, "Maybe some people are never meant to see the depth of your love. Maybe some people only take and never give back." Ayana realized something important in a quiet moment. She didn't need him to apologize. She didn't need him to change. She didn't even need him to see her pain. What she needed was herself. It was a painful lesson. Loving someone so fully, only to be met with neglect and cold indifference, was a lesson she would carry forever. But she also knew this: if she didn't learn to stand for herself now, she would spend a lifetime giving everything to someone who would never care. And that night, as she closed her eyes, she made a quiet promise to herself. Not to Jihoon, not to anyone else, but to herself. She would survive this heartbreak. She would survive this love. And one day, she would find someone worthy of her all. For now, though, she just let herself cry in the dark, letting the sorrow wash over her like a tide that couldn't be stopped, knowing that giving everything doesn't always guarantee a happy ending. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Yet Ayana still found herself thinking about Jihoon, even when she told herself not to. His absence had become a ghost in her life, haunting, quiet, relentless. She tried to distract herself. She went to the gym, started new hobbies, caught up with friends she had ignored for him. But every evening, when the world quieted down, she returned to the same room, the same empty bed, the same glowing phone that never buzzed with his messages anymore. And then one night, unexpectedly, he appeared. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Jihoon, standing outside her apartment, looking hesitant, almost fragile. His hair slightly messy, his hands shoved into his pockets. His eyes were searching, but not for her, they were searching for himself. "Jihoon," she whispered, unsure if she should open the door. He smiled, small and uncertain. "Can we talk?" Ayana hesitated. Part of her wanted to slam the door, to protect herself. Another part, the part that had loved him endlessly, wanted to hear his voice again. She stepped aside. He entered, and for the first time in months, they were in the same space. The air between them felt heavy, thick with all the unspoken words. "Oh, I've been thinking," he started, his voice low. "About us. About everything." Ayana stayed quiet, her arms crossed, body tense. She didn't want to give him any false hope. Not anymore. "I know I hurt you," he continued, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't mean to adjust," but his words faltered. He looked at her as if searching for permission to continue, but Ayana's gaze held nothing but guarded pain. "You were too much for me," he said finally, almost whispering. Ayana felt a shock through her chest. Not anger. Not sadness. Shock. You're saying this now? After months of ignoring me? after making me feel like I gave nothing," she said, her voice trembling but strong. He swallowed, looking down. "I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to handle it. You gave me everything, Ayana. Everything. And I didn't know how to love you back. I didn't know how to keep up with you." Her chest tightened, the familiar ache returning. She had expected a confession of love, an apology, a reason, anything that would justify the months of pain. Instead, he blamed himself in a way that only deepened the wound. Ayana shook her head slowly. "You don't get it. You don't get what it means to give everything and have it treated like nothing. You don't get what it means to love someone with every piece of your heart and be met with indifference." He looked at her, guilt written across his features, but his words were weak. "I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't know how to." Ayana turned away, walking toward the window. She needed air, space, anything to stop the tears threatening to spill. "I can't fix this for you, Ji-hoon," she said quietly, almost to herself. "And I can't keep fixing us when one of us doesn't even try anymore. You didn't see me. You didn't hear me. You didn't care enough to even try." He stood there, silent, his hands dropping to his sides. The apartment felt heavy, suffocating, full of all the moments she had given to him, all the love she had poured out, now invisible. Ayana closed her eyes and took a deep breath. For months, she had survived on hope. Hope that he would change, hope that he would notice, hope that love could bridge the distance between them. But now, she realized hope alone wasn't enough. "Goodbye, Ji-hoon," she whispered. He blinked, not sure if he had heard her correctly. His lips parted, but no words came. Ayana didn't wait. She walked past him, grabbed her coat, and opened the door. Outside, the cold night air hit her face, crisp and biting, yet somehow freeing. She stepped into it fully, leaving him behind in the apartment full of ghosts. For the first time in months, she felt something other than pain. Not happiness, not joy, but clarity. She had loved him fully, with everything she had, and he had failed to meet her halfway. That was his choice, not hers. Walking down the quiet street, Ayana felt the weight slowly lifting. Each step was heavy with memory, but lighter than the night before. She realized heartbreak wasn't just about losing someone. It was about realizing your worth, even when the person you loved most couldn't see it. Ji-hoon watched her leave, finally understanding the magnitude of what he had lost. But understanding came too late. Ayana had already chosen herself. The night swallowed her figure, but the glow of the street lights reflected in her eyes. She didn't cry this time. Not yet. She allowed herself a quiet smile, a small, private acknowledgement that she was still standing. Still breathing. Still herself. She would carry the scars of this love forever. But she would not let them define her. She had learned that loving fully was a strength, not a weakness. And that if someone couldn't honor that love, it wasn't worth holding on to them. Ayana's heart was bruised, but not broken. Not completely. And in that bruised heart, there was room for healing, room for growth, room for someone who would see and cherish her for all that she was. As she walked away, the city lights blurred behind her. She didn't look back. And for the first time, she felt a quiet thrill of freedom. The days after Ji-hoon disappeared from her life were the loneliest Ayana had ever known. She moved through her routines on a utopia at classes, work, errands, but inside, her heart was raw, tender, still aching. Each memory of him felt like a sharp thread cutting through her chest. She tried to pretend she didn't care, that she was fine. But late at night, when the world went quiet, her thoughts betrayed her. She remembered the warmth of his hand, the softness of his voice, the way he once looked at her as if she was the only person in existence. And she missed him. Not because she needed him back, but because loving him had been real. Too real. Too deep to simply erase. One evening, months later, Ayana found herself at the park where they used to sit together, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She traced the outline of the bench with her fingers, remembering how he had once rested his head on her shoulder, silent, content. A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. This time, she let herself feel it. Let herself remember. Let herself grieve. Loving Ji-hoon had taught her more about herself than any joyful experience could. She had learned that giving everything didn't guarantee love in return. That trust could be broken even by someone you thought would never hurt you. That your heart could survive even when it felt shattered into 1,000 pieces. And in that quiet grief, Ayana found strength. Months of heartbreak had changed her. She no longer sought validation from anyone but herself. She no longer measured her worth by someone else's ability to love her. She no longer begged for attention from someone who couldn't see her. She was learning to stand tall again. To breathe deeply again. To love herself again. And then, one night, she received a message. It was from Jihoon. "Ayana, I miss you. I made a mistake. I didn't realize how much I loved you until you were gone." For a moment, she froze. Her heart skipped a beat, not with hope, but with recognition of how far she had come. She could feel the familiar pull, the instinct to reply, to forgive, to beg him to stay. But she didn't. She closed the message without responding. Because she had learned a painful truth. Some people only realize what they had when it's too late. And some lessons are meant to be learned alone. Ayana stood by her window that night, looking out at the city. The lights twinkled like tiny promises, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of calm. She didn't need him. She didn't need anyone. She had herself. She whispered into the night, a quiet vow to herself. "I will never give my everything to someone who cannot see it. I will never lose myself for someone who wouldn't fight for me. And I will always, always choose me." The tears came again, but this time, they were different. They weren't born from heartbreak, they were born from release. Release of the pain, the expectation, the weight of loving someone who couldn't love her back fully. Ayana let herself cry, let herself heal, let herself finally be free. And somewhere far away, Jihoon stared at his screen, realizing the depth of what he had lost, but it no longer mattered. Ayana had moved on. She had grown. She had survived. Love had broken her, yes, but it had also taught her to be unbreakable. And in that unbreakable heart, Ayana found the most powerful love of all, the love for herself.